We'll start off with me waffling for a bit while you get your questions in. So, yeah, I'm going to start talking, fire your questions in. And once we've got a few built up, we'll start answering them. But yeah, the first thing I want to talk about is our most recent releases, which were 2 films to Embryo Angling's brand new. It's the Carp Arena complex, and the lake that we fished, myself and Ash, was called Clover Lake. I think it's about 14 or 15 acres, something like that. 250 fish inside, up to £60. Now, unlike most of the UK sort of day ticket style embryo venues where you just turn up, pay your money, find a peg, you actually pre-book your swim here in advance of your session, which, as I've said before, especially when talking about the Carp venue, it's something that if you're going to go on holiday or you're going to go on a session abroad, the worst thing that could possibly happen is to come out last in the draw, get a terrible swim, and sit there sulking, knowing that you're nowhere near a fish for the duration of that session. But yeah, we had a swim reserved for us on Danny's recommendation. I think the swim's called the Dead Tree Swim. It's a double peg, so if you do book that swim for yourself, you can have 2 of you fishing within that swim. And on this lake, you're allowed to use a boat. And that particular peg has got like a no fishing bank on the far margin that sort of tapers round to a little island. And this island has got a little passageway between that and the far bank. A natural funnel point, and was the best spot during our session there at the Clover Lake. I don't think we didn't have any of the 60s. I don't know how many there are exactly. They're still sort of clay in the photos to know exactly what's in there, but definitely a good head of decent fish. We had fish to 53, several 40s at, I think we had 15 to 20 fish between us, something like that. Maybe lost a couple. But what I liked about it was, if you're going to go on a holiday in the summer, this particular swim that we were in was completely in the forest, like in the shade, like car park behind you, a nice jetty to put your boat in and take your rods out from. I could see if you want to go fishing with a mate, have a really nice social in nice surroundings, a fairly, I would say, easy to moderate sort of fishing. It's not going to be rock hard, I don't imagine. Pretty straightforward fishing, taking it with a boat, placing it down, putting a handful of bait over the top. But obviously Dan's going to put a lot into it. I think they're doing a lot of snag removal over the winter. It's available. You can book your swims now for next spring. But yeah, over the winter they're improving the swims, taking out the snags, that sort of stuff. So it should be all ready to go by the time that you get there. Another thing that I want to talk about is I had a couple of nice sessions at Grenville, end of November into December. I did talk about that on the live last time, so I won't go too deep. But yeah, 2 mega sessions fishing at long distance, pretty much as far as I could cast. Paul, the owner of the lake, puts the bait out. You put your marker light out, give him your bait. He goes out in the boat, throws it all around the marker. And at that time of year, I've never fished anywhere where you can put out those levels of bait. The first night when I sent him out with a bucket for me, it was 5 kilos. And then very quickly, the 5 kilos are turning into 15 kilos, turning into 20 kilos. And having 20 kilo boilie bait drops is something that I've never done anywhere, not even France, not even in the height of summer. That I've done it when I'm pre-baiting, but I've never done it as to fish over and catch fish over immediately. But that's Grenville, a complete anomaly. I can't even say it.
Anomaly.
I
can't even say it.
Anomaly. So many big fish. Literally a couple of thousand fish. Average size of 37 pound. Loads of 40s, loads of 50s, and whatnot. So when they turn up, as you imagine in the winter, when they're all sort of grouped up like that, if you get in the right swim by seeing where they're jumping, get your bait close to that shoal. If you can get them dropping onto that bait, then I imagine the feeding frenzy that follows is insane. So a couple of nice sessions there. A few of the fish will end up on one of Scotty's vlogs. I've not been filming my sessions there. Scott's doing his vlog, and a few of the fish that I've caught are going to make it into that. But also I had I had a really, really good session to Gigantica recently. Ash has been working on that last week or so. He reckons it's going to be an hour and a half long, single part film. Tom Stokes features in the film. He was basically fishing next door to me, and because he caught a few, he features in the film as well. He done really well. I think he had 16 or 17, which when you take into account that he came last in the draw to pull ball 7 of 7, going what other people didn't think or fancy as a good swim, and to catch that many fish in December was really, really, really good angling to watch. He caught all of his fish at night, and I caught all of my fish in the day. I had a couple just into dark. You have dinner up at the lodge sort of 5, 6 o'clock, 4, 5, 6 o'clock, that sort of time. And I had a few takes around like an hour into dark, so an hour and a half into dark, that sort of thing. And then was having like the most blissful, uninterrupted sleep. So I was going to bed 8, 9 o'clock, sleeping through till 7 in the morning, getting up and just spomming out as much bait as I could, as quickly as I could, recasting the rods, refreshing them. I pulled ball 5 of 7 and got what was my third choice of swim. Third choice of swim. I would have picked Alamo above that, and I would have picked Coes, but in hindsight, it was the right swim to be in. Found a lovely area out there at 33 wraps, and just, like I say, filled it in with sweet corn, crumb boilies, and normal cell boilies, combi multi-rigs over the top. One thing that did stand out as being like the winning hook bait as such was plastic maize toppers. Now, I don't know exactly why that is. I do a little bit of sweet corn goes in there, a little bit of maize and whatnot, but there was a definite noticeable increase of activity on yellow hook baits. Whether that's something that's just for there or other venues, I think it's very venue dependent, and at times they'll change from one colour to another as it gets fished out as such. But that is a film definitely to look forward to. Like I say, an hour and a half single film. I think I caught over 30 fish, but I think around 35 fish, something like that. Lost a few as well, so it was like relentless action. Sometimes I was recasting after having a fish, and when I'm sinking the line, got a big bow of it out there in the ripple, I'm sinking the line, it would just suddenly pull tight in my hands. And that happened at least 2 times, maybe 3 times. And I also had a triple take one day. So, yeah, a quality film. I think there's 540s in it, plenty of good fish, and I'm sure you'll all enjoy that. Scott, have we got any questions?
That was a lot of talking. Just a quick one. I had a slight error. I didn't enable the live chat. So if you can't see the live chat, refresh, and then you will be able to see the live chat. Technical. Also, my wife tells me there's a very slight lag of about half a second between the audio and the video. So it might not be a problem because I'm saving a video version as well. It might just be the stream.
Right, okay.
So if you've got a slight lag, apologies. It might be a little bit off-putting. But we'll still do the questions.
Yeah.
Another film to look forward to, I think it'll be next Friday, is Moz's vlog. So those of you who've watched Moz's vlog, he has been fishing on the Chase for the last year or so, and he managed to catch, won't give it all away, but he managed to catch, you might have seen some of his pictures, some of the big fish out of there, all in one session as well. Nice. Which is going to be good. So that's all finished and done. So that should be next Friday. If not, it'll be my next Grenville video, which is the one that you've just spoke about, the one where you're catching some nice fish. So yeah, we've got lots of questions.
Good.
But yeah, like I say, refresh the chat if you can't see it, and then get your questions in. We'll go through as many as we can. Hopefully, we'll get them all answered. Our first one is from Liam Banks. I'm sure Liam was first last time as well.
He's a regular. Hi, Liam.
Happy New Year to you both. Happy New Year. Right, Daryl, when fishing over weed with a heli-style system, how do you gauge how far to set the top bead to make sure you are presented?
That's a good question. It does depend on what type of weed you're fishing over. I do think there's times and situations where just placing the top bead further up the line won't be adequate. If you're casting into sort of grassy style weed, that's just not going to present properly over the top of that. But if you, especially, we're talking now, we're moving from the winter. Usually the weed will be dying down, very low lying, especially moving into spring. It should have been pretty much broken down by then. And then you're in a situation where you want to be able to fish, not just the blatant clear spots that have been hammered, completely hammered. You want to be fishing like exactly where the fish are showing. And as long as you can get a drop of some description, if it's not, when I say some description, not one of those drops where you feel it going falling through something, because that's no good. But if you're getting sort of like a muffled drop, then I think that 3 foot, 2.5 to 3 foot bead up away from the ledge, your second bead. And then when you're feeling it down, you don't want to be doing that sort of feel down where you pull it back and put it down. You really want to be sort of hitting the clip and sort of feeling it down all in one motion, so that the rig can slide up to that top bead and settle over the top of the weed, the debris that you're trying to fish over. So as long as you're getting some form of drop, and you're not bringing in like grassy style weed, then you should be presented with a 2.5 to 3 foot high bead up the line or leader that you're fishing.
Cool. Matt Brown has asked, what is your worst fishing related injury?
No, I've not had
hooks in the fingers or anything like that?
Yeah, one happened at Northey Park. I was fishing one time. I was fishing at Northey Park, and there's this like snag bush that you could walk round into the back of, but it was like pretty steep bank to get down in and out of. And when I was climbing back out of there was like I can't remember if it was a rock or a piece of steel sticking out of the ground. But just as I was like sort of using my feet to get up the hill, one of the feet slipped out from underneath me, and my knee planted onto. It was either like a rock or a metal point, and it hurt so much. I didn't make a sound, but I thought I was going to be sick in my mouth instantly. It was like it made me like because it hurt so much. And the only time that I've hooked myself, well, obviously I've pricked myself loads of times, but I mean like one of those ones where it needs doing. You got to do something to it. At Orient one night, it was really, really windy. I dropped the lead over the side. Didn't get the drop that I wanted because it was windy. Reeled it in, went to swing the lead into my hand, and at the moment as it came towards me like that, a wave hit the boat and a 10-ounce gripper went up in the air. It pricked me, and then it fell down. And luckily, like that fat bit on the bottom of the palm, it was it was completely in there, like a size 4 YK double X, but it was, if it had gone into a joint, if it goes into like a joint, you'd have been straight to the hospital. But because it just went straight into a not fatty bit, but a muscly bit, on the side of your hand, it was just in flesh, which is the best that you could hope for in that situation.
Horrible.
Yeah, it was raw.
Right. Corey O'Connell, evening lads, very happy new year to you both. Happy new year to you. Quick question, this time of year, would you be looking for more weed or a clean bottom?
I'd be looking for the fish, like that. In an ideal world, you present, it depends on the lake. Say you're fishing a lake that's got no weed in it, then it's still where the fish are. But if you're fishing a lake that has got weed and clear spots, a lot of the winter fishing I find is like near stuff at times, depending on the venue. It can be near dying weed beds, near dying lily beds, near dying reed beds, all of that sort of stuff, overhanging trees, snags. But on lakes that don't have that, it can be just out in the middle. If you're fishing somewhere like Berners Hall, big windswept, sort of 13-foot deep, general like clay sort of pit, then it's just wherever those fish are. One thing that's almost certain is that location is never more important than in winter. So it's, if they're in the weed, near the reeds, in open water, wherever it is, you just need to be exactly right. And when you are in exactly the right place in the winter, you can sometimes have better sessions in the winter than you can in the summer, because the fish are more spread out in the summer. They might be feeding more, they might be moving more, but on the right venue, if you are right in if you're fishing these heavily stocked venues like Berners, like some of the common day ticket lakes like Farlow's, Norton Disney, your Linears, those sort of places, the stocking density on them places is insane. So you could, if you're in the right spot, you could have your rig under 1,000 carp. And if you're the guy that's in that swim, then you can have crazy sessions. You know, it's I wouldn't be looking. I'd be looking for the fish. I'm not worried about what's out there. I just want my rig exactly where the fish are. And if it's weedy, you fish over the weed if you have to, or you fish in the clear spot nearest to the weed, or you present how you have to. But the most important thing is look for the fish, because they're not swimming, they're not looking for you. You need to be exactly right.
Cool. I think you've answered. So Tom Young just before asked, "Evening, Daryl. What's your best winter tip?" I guess that's probably the same. You've covered it in a way there, or is there anything else?
Best winter tip would be my best winter tip would be to try and watch the weather. So, for example, at the moment it's pretty cold outside. We had a really mild December. Lots of places fished quite well. Now it's got cold now. It could get colder still, but I watch the weather around this time. You're always going to get big winds with milder temperatures at some point through the winter. You know what? I always think once it's over 10, 10's interesting. 12 is very interesting, and especially if the nighttime temperatures, if you can get nighttime temperatures over 7 or 8 degrees as well, coupled with daytime temperatures around 10, 12, with a big blow, that upward lift in temperature in lakes will stir a response. I think sometimes the fish do go a little bit torpid when it's freezing cold. You can still catch them if you're exactly right, but I think they're more likely to feed heavier on rising water temperatures. So my advice would be, get yourself organised, get all your tackle nice, neat, tidy, all in place so it's ready. You haven't got to suddenly do all that. So if it's all organised, keep your eye on the weather. And it doesn't matter if the weather is mild for a few days and then it goes cold, because that mild weather would have warmed the water temperature. So if you arrive at the back end of a mild spell, that, to be honest, could be better. If you arrive on day one when it first goes mild, the water's still freezing cold. Usually these mild spells last a few days, a week, and you definitely want to have a couple of days of the surface being warmed up by the big winds, by the milder temperatures, for it to really start having an impact.
It's like when you go on holiday, you're acclimatised to the warmer weather, and you get more comfortable, and then you're happy to spend more time out and about.
Yeah,
like the same with the fish.
Yeah, they're cold blooded. So when the water's freezing, they can't really be moving around or feeding as much.
No.
And they definitely it's a few degrees. If you've had daytime temp 4 or 5 degrees minus at night, the water temperature could be 5 degrees, something like that.
Yeah.
If you get a few days of 12 degrees and a big wind on a shallow lake, that temperature goes up 4 degrees. You've doubled the temperature of the water, which, when you're talking doubling of anything, that's pretty serious change.
Yeah. Daniel Hockaday, email myself, scott@carpfix.tv. It is something we can look at. It just depends on the dates. September's a very busy time. Just asking about a charity event, but September, like I say, is busy. But send us an email. We'll see if we can do something. James Chamberlain has asked, when are you and Scott coming round for an ice bath at Ice Bath Therapy Essex?
Literally, you've got about minus 1 million% chance of that, because I struggle to wash in the lake in the middle of the summer. Right, I get up to my goolies and just turn into a big girl. The thought of I've seen it, so many people are doing it at the moment, jumping in these ice baths. The long story short is I'm not man enough. Scott might.
No, because Kev Wyatt at Corders said that he's got one in his garden. I'm like, no.
Yeah, I'm like, no.
I'd go in one, but I wouldn't we can, sorry to put a dampener on it, James, but it's not what we, it's not my cup of tea.
If it was a hot tub, we'd be talking.
Yeah. If you've got an ice bath and a hot tub, you can have a quick dip in the ice bath and then the hot tub, no problem.
Yeah.
James Burke, fishing zigs this time of year. What depth depth level in water would you be looking to start with, or would you cover different levels? So, if so, at what increments?
Well, it really, really depends on the venue, because you can't compare somewhere which is like 4 or 5 foot deep all over, or even 2-3 foot deep, or somewhere that's 50 foot deep. So I'll give you a few different examples. Let's say you're fishing in your local park lake and it's got an average depth of like 2, 3, 4 foot. I don't think you go far wrong fishing 18 inches off the bottom mid-water, that sort of depth. Just they're most likely to encounter it because it's just in the middle, and you've got a very shallow. You haven't really got much range to get it wrong as such. So yeah, I'll be looking to fish mid-water, on somewhere like that in the middle. If it's like a bit deeper, say you're going to somewhere like Linear, you've got St John's, it's like 12, 13 foot deep. Somewhere like Brasenose, maybe 12, 13 foot deep like that. I think this sort of time of year, 3 foot off the bottom, 3, 4 foot can sometimes be good. Not sometimes it could be 2 foot below surface, so you do have to chop and change. But I don't think you go too far wrong starting at sort of 3, 4 foot off the bottom, and then maybe working your way up from there. And really deep lakes, I think you're going to be in the top third. If they've come off the bottom, you're going to be higher in the water. When I fished at Bundy's, for example, in January, we were catching them 15 foot down, and then as you moved from January into February, it became 12 foot down, and as it moved into March, it became 6 foot down. So it was like getting gradually higher in the water. But I would say that for me, when I start zig fishing, generally from, I would say, the middle of February onwards. Personally, I'm not saying everywhere, but as a general rule on a lot of lakes, I think that when you get those mild spells that I've just talked about, if it's been windy and blowy and the lake's quite shallow, I'll be more likely to be fishing on the bottom. And it's more as the sun gets higher in the sky, as you're coming out of winter and going towards spring, when you start to feel those sunny days where it's freezing cold at night, and then it can be almost t-shirt weather in the day. So yeah, I'm not a big zig user at this time, but I think zigs are at their absolute best back end of February to the middle of April. I think that sort of 6-week period is like when zigs are at their very, very, very best.
Lovely job. James Dark has asked, got a ticket for a lake that is a farmer's lake, so levels can change throughout the year. Any advice? I guess that's a little. So
what's the question?
He's fishing a farmer's lake, and the levels can change a bit, probably like Bayswater, I guess. Throughout the year. Any advice?
Yeah. Okay. So quite often you'll find in the spring, the water is at the highest, so it's been filled up all winter long. They fill them up, and in that situation, the fish in the spring will come right into the edges on a lot of venues like that to search out like fresh ground, as such, ground that's been dry, and then it's quite fertile ground often on those sort of lakes where it's been sort of dried out and then got wet again. And then obviously as the water level goes down, the fish move out into the deeper water. So they're the two things that I'd be like, that sort of stand them out as different to other sort of lakes because they have water level changes. They're the things that stand out to me is, the newer ground that the fish can explore when the water's high, and they tend to explore that more so in the spring. And then once the level starts going down, you'll notice the fish heading out, especially the back end of the summer into autumn, sort of exploring the deeper water, which they do anyway on normal lakes. So yeah, that's what I would say regarding that.
Cool. Just a quick one. I've noticed a lot of people on here have added pictures to their thumbnail, like their little
from the community page.
Well, no. So like, if you go onto the account, what I was going to say is, if you go on the website, not through the app, go on the website, go to my account, you can add your own picture, like a profile picture.
Yeah. Okay. How's the lag at the moment?
It'll always be there. I think there's something going on in the background. Right. I think it'll just be there for this one. It's happened before. Right. I'm not too sure why. But I'm watching it on here and it's okay. But I'm watching it with no sound. But I can see there is a slight lag in the video.
Yeah.
Anyway. Pesca has asked, good evening, Daryl. Do you think you could use the same techniques in the UK, France, Spain, and Italy, or is it different from one to the other country?
Well, if you've watched many of the videos that we've done, we've fished all around. We've been to Spain. I don't think we've done Italy yet, have we?
No.
We've done Germany.
Yeah.
We've done lots of French venues, commercial venues. Belgium.
German, yeah.
And quite often, the tactics are very similar. The rules change on venues. A lot of time in the UK, you're not allowed to place your rods with boats. So you'll notice when we go abroad, you're allowed to use boats to place your rigs. So we do, and in that situation, you're fishing with braided line, big leads. But the rigs are similar. Sometimes a little bit more heavy duty. But it depends on the venue. It's not just the country. It's how different the lake is as such. But you couldn't get much, like Orellana, for example. Oriana is quite a mad lake. It's like nothing else. I've never fished anywhere like Orellana. Very rocky, but it isn't actually that snaggy. So we're fishing just with normal 15-pound braid, normal leg core leader, etc. Combi multi-rig. Yes, we're using size 4s rather than 6s, but more or less the same. Whether I'm fishing Orient, I tend to fish pretty similar. Combi multi-rigs when I'm fishing on the bottom, sometimes beefed up, as in like bigger hooks, sometimes smaller hooks. And I tend to fish stiff hinge rigs when I'm fishing pop-ups. And sometimes I fish solid bags, not that often, not very often. Sometimes I fish ziggs. So yeah, I think I was thinking of another video we could do at some point is the only 4 or 5 rigs you need, because I imagine for lots of people getting into fishing that there's so many. It's a minefield out there, and they all work. But if you said to people, like, here's 4 rigs that cover nearly all the situations. You need a rig to fish on the bottom with a wafter or a bottom bait. You need a rig to fish a pop-up, maybe present over some weed and bits and pieces. You need to be able to fish solid bags sometimes, and you need to be able to fish ziggs. Now, if you've got those 4 in your locker, they might need to be beefed up slightly for different situations, but they cover all aspects. So it's, a lot of people get there. Some people are into rigs, as in, like, they enjoy the mechanics of rigs. They enjoy tinkering with bait and stuff like that. I'm not really into that. I think of rigs like tools. I want to use the same thing over and over again, so that I'm good with my tools, rather than trying things that I'm uncertain about, especially when the stakes are high. So fishing is more or less the same from one country to another. We all think it's different. It's different on my lake. They don't jump on my lake. They don't eat pop-ups on my lake. But that give or take, it's all pretty similar.
Cool. Adam has asked, hi Daryl, I'm fishing embryo pump house at the moment, but only 2 low doubles have come out since October. Do I persist or go elsewhere until it picks up in springtime? Have you fished pump house?
No, I haven't fished pump house, so I don't know it well.
Rob's a good one for this. But
is that the one he fished with the reeds and he caught those ones when it's freezing cold? Do you remember, what lake was that? Or is that the one?
I'm not too sure. I can't remember. It's the one that's like in the industrial kind of area.
Is it the one that you pre-book or you all fish on the same little?
You're all kind of on one bank in a sense, and there is a reed line on the far side.
If it's the one I'm thinking of the one that Rob filmed out with Ash, like they just caught them cast it. It was like half frozen at the time. They were catching them right next to the reeds, but it might not be the same lake. But anyway, if the lake's fishing really, really poor, then it might, if you've got a specific target that you want to catch from there. If you have, then persevere. But it won't hurt to go somewhere more prolific. If you haven't got much time, you want to make the most of that time, then you could be better off going somewhere with a higher stock that's doing a few, And then I always think that most lakes are starting to sort of twitch, like not most lakes, but a lot of lakes are starting to sort of come to life around March and into April. Obviously, the more difficult ones can start to fish much later. But from March and April, you should be seeing sort of activity, things should be starting to happen, and no one needs to waste their time flogging a dead horse. So yeah, it depends how desperate you are to catch the fish within that lake.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I would definitely message Rob though, because he's fished there quite a bit.
Yeah, Rob would know more.
Yeah, and have a look. It might. I can't remember. We've got obviously a lot of films on there, but if it's on our channel, have a look through Rob's, and there might be a film there. Was it a CarpFix one that he did?
Yeah, it might not be.
I'll have a look
one.
while we do another question and
Right.
see if I can find it.
Okay.
Anyway, Sam Wright is fishing Hawcott Lakes right now, hoping for a Cotswold banger.
Cotswold banger.
Yeah. Matthew Parr, evening fellas, new syndicate water, fishing 100 plus to the far margin, snags with low stretch line and fishing locked up. How close would you fish to the snags with stretch in the mono?
It really depends how bad the snags are and how close you are to like the worst of it. You know, like you can have snags like overhanging trees that are clear underneath, and you just got to hold on, and they'll come out from underneath the trees. And other times it can be like a forest down there, and it's just suicide. So if it's 100 yards, you know, you're going to need at least 6 foot. You know, but 100, like when you look like you're really tight at 100 yards, you could be more than 6 foot off. So it's really hard to give you an answer. You know, like you don't. Basically, if you're losing like fish from getting snagged up, that's not cool. You know, like if you start losing like more than 1 in 5, like say you're having 5 takes, one of them's getting snagged and you have to pull for a break, that's not cool. That's like not okay in my opinion. So yeah, I can't give you an answer because I can't see the snags. I don't know how bad they are. You've got to make the call yourself, you know. But don't be tempted to fish right close to them at that range and be leaving tackling fish sort of frequently. I know it does happen from time to time. We all can't, and you can't help it. But like doing something that's very likely to happen, it's not cool. That.
Cool. Stephen Bond, dropping your rig from a bait boat. Current trends seem to be to gather the baits in the hopper around the hook bait, yet when the rig descends, the hook link follows straight down. Where do you load?
Say that again. Right, I was sort of with you, but say it again.
So he's dropping your rig from a bait boat.
Yeah.
Current trend seems to be to gather the baits in the hopper around the hook bait, yet when the rig descends, the hook link follows straight down. Where do you load? How would you?
Yeah, if he's talking about how you're distributing the bait within the hopper and thinking that correlates to how it lands on the bottom, I think that's a bit deep. Like, I think that's... some people would try and feel the lead down from bait boat. And when you feel the lead down, you're obviously the lead is going to be swinging back towards you to a degree, depending on how tight your line is, how much slack's in it, how deep the water is. Those sort of things are going to have a factor on how much it swings back. And on lakes where I know that it's clear, especially when I'm using Echo, I've started dropping it free fall, as in like I take it out to a clip. I let go of the line before I open the hopper, so I've got the line tight, and as soon as I'm happy with the boat's position exactly where it is, I let go of the line and immediately hit the hopper door, and you see the line shoot forward. So the lead is falling directly down, but you do have an element of surface tension, like an element, and I do think that probably brings it back, depending on the depth, a fraction. And I think that the rig lands on the near edge of the bait in that situation. But you don't want the rig to swing away from the bait completely, because having fish feeding right directly around the rig is what you want, you know. So I would try not to have the rig falling through the bait, ideally. You'd have seen in the CarpFix videos where I'm using a bait boat. I was using one at Wazing, using one at Burners on one of the films, and I was using a foam nugget around the hook point. And the reason for the foam nugget, you know, you never see me use a foam nugget when I'm casting, and the only reason I use one in a bait boat is to let the rig slide out of the hopper doors, because I'm scared of it catching on the hopper door, taking the point, burring the hook, or hooking some bait on the way down, like grabbing some of the bait. So I'd use a foam nugget. I would drop it free fall if I know it's clear out there. And another top tip is not put too much bait in the bait boat. I generally think that less is more, especially in the winter. Just a couple of handfuls is plenty. A couple of 3 handfuls.
Yeah, when you put when we've put a GoPro under the boat or something, and you put 2 handfuls of corn, and when that goes onto the bottom, it looks like whoa.
Yeah, if you're spomming, it's different because it's never landing exactly right. But that is the beauty of the bait boat. It's very, very hard to recreate how good a bait boat is. It is something that the presentation of that is almost impossible to recreate, especially at distance. And it is almost like you're setting a stall out for a few. Almost like imagine to come in, start feeding, get hooked on almost instantly because it's so good.
Yeah, I think one of the films was last autumn, not the 2 autumns ago. We did that one at was it Cheshire Lake, low stock big carp film.
Yeah,
I'm sure you might have talked a little bit about using the boat then potentially.
Yeah, okay.
So that might be worth watching that one. It's called Low Stocked Big Carp Fishing.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a bit of info in there as well.
Yeah.
Right, let's have a look. Marcel has asked, I don't see you using an underwater camera to investigate pre-baited spots, new spots or rig positions after dropping. Is there a specific reason for this? I fish often on big public lakes and slow-flowing rivers in France and Holland, and my underwater camera has been very helpful in the past.
I'm hearing, obviously it's not new, but it's relatively new, having this sort of equipment, like a little winch cam. And a lot of people, Tom Stokes was telling me that he's got one.
Yeah, saw him use it in Belgium.
Yeah, checking to see if the bait's gone. It's something that I don't own at the moment. And until I suppose you've seen it firsthand and how valuable it could be, you just tend to make do doing what you're doing. So no, it is something that that I should probably get. But God, you start getting more and more and more and more stuff to bring with you, and I'm not trying to cut my stuff down. But yeah, I can definitely see the benefit. If you've been fishing on a spot and you've not caught, you always assume that no fish have came. None of them come by. You put the camera over the side. If you see all your bait's gone, then you know that you should have caught, and that might influence your decision to stay put rather than move. So I think it's a good thing. I do think, but it is another thing to carry.
Yeah, the one that Tom's got it's in a small box, which is probably similar to what Marcel's got. But in Belgium, where the lake was really snaggy, he would go out on the boat. He'd know that the area that he wanted to fish, but he'd drop this camera down, and he was finding stuff that he didn't. Even Dan didn't know it was there. There was literally metal. There was we found tires.
Yeah.
In the bottom, but then further round on one of the spots he did fish, he was finding holes where the carp had cleared it, and you could see where they've been digging into the side.
Yeah, carp holes.
Yeah, so it obviously is an advantage.
Yeah.
But it's just like you say, it's another one of those things.
Yeah, the winch cam on a bait boat could just you've got
they're around,
winch cams, you've got all of these things. The trouble is when you're on a normal inflatable, you're obviously always on the drift. It's very hard to continually get it on exactly the same spot. But yeah, for checking your bait's gone, I think
that's the thing. When you're doing it by hand on a boat, you're attached to the cable. So all he does when he finds a spot he likes, he just drops the camera into the bottom, and then his cable just stays loose, and he can just get himself back on top, put his lead marker.
Yeah.
So for that, it's perfect.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that. It's good.
Might be giving his tip away, but I'm sure
edgy.
Lots of people like Marcel already do it.
Yeah.
Right, bear with me. I've lost where I am here. Marcel, Wes. In the tackle industry, is there any beef between other competitors, or do the companies get on? Just curious.
I thought there's obviously a level of competitiveness, I suppose, by rival brands to a degree, but I think it's all pretty civil. I don't think there's any too much beef between companies that I know of.
I think everyone just it concentrates on themselves.
Yeah, I think
you start thinking about other people.
Yeah, it's not a good, looking. There's always going to be people doing better than you. There's always going to be people doing worse than you. You just got to try and do the best you can. And yeah, I wouldn't worry too much.
I'm sure there are times when like a company brings out a product and then another company brings out an identical product and they're like, "Come on, boys," or something like that. But
Yeah, of course. But like, for example, like if you got everyone does tail rubbers, everyone does kickers. You know, everyone's got size 8 swivels, size 11 swivels, or whatever. You know, like they just have them in their range. But yeah, I imagine they're obviously they are competitors at the end of the day, but. There's enough.
They don't go around to each other's warehouses going, "You're a."
No, and when you're at the Carp shows, for example, quite often, like I've been doing the Carp shows for a long time, like 15 years or so, and you're quite often all in the same hotel. Chat, and you have a beer with each other in the evening. It's
don't
like,
knock each other out.
Yeah, it's not like it's not it's not like that.
Right. Okay. There's a little insight then. Neil Roberts, I'm on the bank 5 a.m. tomorrow, hoping to bag a January carp with the new moon phase. Lake is between 10 to 35 foot and it's 10 acres. What's your game plan? 10 to 35 foot, 10 acres.
How many's in there?
No idea. I guess I reckon not that many.
What's my game plan? If there's an obvious holding area, like as in a massive reed bed with a hole in the middle where they can just go and sit in sanctuary, that's great. If it's really sort of, there's an area where they can get out of the way, like an out of bounds, and I want to be near that out of bounds maybe. Sometimes it's just about being in the middle, but every lake's different. You know, you just got to be. My tip is you got to do your damnedest to be exactly in the right spot. You know, you can. In the winter, you could be 2 wraps too short on the known going spot, and the fish could just be sat there all together just a little bit further. And if you knew that and you made the adjustment, then you might start catching. But without knowing that they're there, you know, everything you're doing, you feel like you're camping until I always feel like I'm camping until I know where the fish are, and never more so than in the winter. You know, if I've got no idea where the fish are, it's very hard to be confident. So yeah, I can't give you a game plan without looking at the lake, knowing the lake, or knowing where the fish are. It's the game plan is put it where they are. That's the game plan. Yeah.
Right, Paul Linwood. Hi both. Any news on the £60 fully? Smiley face.
I didn't catch it. Yeah, that's basically what happened is I fished 3 weeks. I think I got an extra night as well, so I think it was like 22 nights in total that I was there. I actually forgotten, I think it was 30 odd fish. I think it was maybe it's 28, 29, 30. I think it was 30. But I didn't catch too well at the very beginning, like the very first couple of days. And then like about 3 days in, I started catching. I was catching really well for, let's say, a week. So like 10 days in, I was like, but the first week, I'd done pretty good. And I was thinking, I'm going to catch loads here, and there's a really good chance of catching it. Then we had a little bit of cold weather for just a couple of 3 nights where it was freezing cold and frosty. And it went a bit slower after that. And then I had to move a couple of times. And I was catching them pretty consistently. I think at one point I might have had 3 nights on the spin where I didn't catch. Or I think at one point I did have 3 nights on the spin where I didn't catch. But as a general rule, it got more and more difficult as the session progressed, because you're moving from the beginning of October towards November. And I had the whole lake to myself. I had everything stacked in my favour. And when I left, having caught 30 odd fish, 730s, I thought I'd done pretty good, but without setting the world on fire. Like I walked away from there thinking, I could have done this better, I could have done that better. But in hindsight, they had a winter syndicate on there, loads of good anglers on this. Well, not say loads, there's about, I think, 10 to 15 guys on this winter syndicate, all very capable anglers. And since I left there's only been 2 fish caught. So knowing that makes me feel a whole lot better about how I did. To catch 30 fish in 21 nights, 22 nights, and then only do 2 after that means that I wasn't doing it too badly. I must have been doing it half right. Had everything stacked in my favour, no angling pressure from other anglers, was able to move and whatnot. And obviously, when this winter syndicate started, you've got a lot more angling pressure on the water all at once, and I imagine it just shut up shop on the back of that. But yeah, I've got another couple of sessions booked for this year, later in the year. But it's to target a fish on a lake like that is very difficult in that there's 150 to 200 fish, I think they say. Like, it's hard to remember exactly what they said at the time, but I think it's 150 to 200 fish, something like that. And if you think that every week it's got generally 4 or 5 blokes on it, like every single night from the spring on, at least 4 or 5 blokes on it, and only 2 people caught that fish last year, you know, that's puts it into perspective. You know, every single week 4 or 5 blokes on it, and only 2 of those 4 or 5 blokes of every single week have managed to put it on the bank. So yeah, I'm going to do as much as I can, but it's, you know, it's not cheap to have it exclusively, and the availability is fully booked for next year already. So yeah, I'd love to catch it, but it's not something that I can say, yeah, I'm going to go there and have it, because I haven't got the time, I haven't got the bookings. I'd love to book it for like all of May and all of August and all of September, and just sit there, and I'm sure you'd catch it eventually. But we'll see.
Right. Any tips for fishing the road lake in height of summer? That's from Lewis. Did we sort out the social thing for? We haven't
advertised it or anything.
No,
yet.
have we got something booked though? Is it booked?
Yeah, we've got.
Okay.
We've got
That's
another.
good.
We've got a week booked for CarpFix social.
Shall I put it in the diary now?
I can't remember when it is, to be fair.
Is it next year or this year?
Next year.
2025.
Yeah, it's both across both lakes. We've got Giganta and the road lake. But to answer your question, you're going in the height of summer on the road lake. I haven't fished it for years, so I really don't know too much. What I do know, as a general rule, the fish are either in one half or the other. You know, it's very rare that both ends of the lake are fishing well at the same time. And for some reason, I just feel like the furthest half, the second half, that's the area at the end of the lake that they're in more frequently. I think there's a bit more going on at that end. You've got the bunds, you've got a few overhanging trees and whatnot. But yeah, you'd have to ask the bailiffs closer to the time, and obviously you've got a lot riding on it with the draw. But if you get in the right swim and you're on the fish, you can't. I think it's very difficult to put too much bait out. I think that if you're really on them on there's so many big uns, and they're in such a concentrated bit of water, you can really go through some bait. But nothing too complicated rig wise. It'll be bags or wafters, you know, fished on sort of standard rigs. Over a spotted area, you know, boilies, some of their house particle that they sell, pellets and whatnot. But yeah, I think it's all about the draw. Get the right swim. If you're on them, it's pretty straightforward, I think.
Cool. Right, one from Lee. You use the combi rig for the majority of your fishing. A lot of other named anglers quarter use the spinner for bottom baits. What advantages and disadvantages do you see to this rig compared to your combi?
Well, it depends. When I was using spinner rigs on the bottom, I felt like I lost a few more fish when fishing like that. I just felt like my hook to land ratio wasn't quite as good as when I changed to that combi multi rig, and because I've done well using the combi multi rig, I don't feel the need to change it. But you know, a lot of people are going onto spinner rigs. You know, Dan has been fishing spinner rigs off the back of what he saw on an upcoming underwater film. I think Stokesy fishes with spinner rigs a lot. I'm not sure if he fishes with them on the bottom or not. He definitely fishes with them when he's fishing pop-ups and whatnot. I've got sort of 2 presentations that I like. One is the combi multi-rig for fishing on the bottom, and one is the stiff hinge for fishing with pop-ups. And like I said a little bit earlier, I'm not really someone to have loads of different tools. I get confident in something, build confidence in that, and want to just fish with that all the time. So the advantages of, say, not fishing a spinner on the bottom is you haven't got that dirty great swivel directly under the hook, which is, it's a little bit ugly. I'm not sure how much difference it makes, but it's certainly not as subtle as a combi multi-rig. And I do feel that I land a higher percentage of fish on the rigs that I fish compared to people that do fish spinner rigs, but that, I'm sure they would argue differently. You know, it comes down to a personal preference thing.
Cool. Peter Marriott has asked, hi Daryl, how do you go about targeting fish that's pretty smart?
Generally, you know, people will talk about, when targeting a fish, that you fish the areas where particular fish get caught. Now, there might be an element of truth in that for certain fish at certain times, but a fish has fins, and from what I've seen over the years, that too much is placed on the history of what carp have done in that too much is put into. People think that it was caught from that swim last September, it's going to come from that swim again next September. From what I've seen, it's very rarely the case. You know, the fish get caught all over the lake in most cases, sometimes in similar areas, you know, but not always. And generally, my way of targeting Pacific fish is just to catch as many as possible and stack the law of averages in your favour. You know, I have caught fish by design, by fishing in certain areas at certain times, but I've caught more of the big uns from more lakes just by catching fish, and they just turn up in the bottom of the landing net, you know. So yeah, the most important thing is to catch as many as possible generally, and eventually you will get the one that you want.
Cool. We've got one from Sam Wright, the chap who is on Hawcott Lakes, I think he's there at the moment. Yeah, he's fishing at 27.5 wraps.
What tree?
Huh? No idea.
I'm joking.
I'm pretty sure I'm hitting the spot I found, but it's shallow. It's a shallow lake, 5 to 6 foot, and I'm struggling to get a drop. Any tips?
Yeah, at that range, in that depth, it's going to be difficult to get a drop, and the way to make sure that you do is to not cast too high. If you cast too high, hit the clip, it's going to fall out of the sky and be on the bottom before you get a chance to feel it. What you need to do is cast it out there harder than it needs to be cast at a fairly low trajectory. Anticipate the clip at the last minute. I don't mean like cast, bring the rod back instantly and wait for it, but like cast, it needs to be going out there at a momentum that's too far. It's going to reach that spot with some velocity, and at the last second before it does hit that clip, you bring the rod to the side, cushion the lead down. If you cushion it well with the right amount of pressure, then you stay in contact with the lead as it hits the water and as you feel it down, and as soon as you feel it going, like it extend out like that, pull the rod back to take out any slack that may have occurred in the line, and then hold it there and you should feel it down. But that's the skill, you know. It's the shorter the distance, the deeper the water, the easier it is to feel the lead down. The further out, the shallower the water, the more difficult it is. But it is possible to feel the lead down at 110 yards in 5-6 foot of water. But it just means that you've got to cast harder than required, a low trajectory, cushion it down so that you stay in contact with the lead, and the moment the lead hits the water, pick up the rod to take up any slack, and then feed it down.
Cool. We've had this quite a few times before, but we'll cover it again. Daniel has asked, how much shorter would you wrap your fishing rods compared to your marker rod due to stretch on mono at around 80 to 100 yards?
It depends on the line and the depth. But like say you're fishing somewhere like Giganta, 22, 23 foot all over. If I was fishing 80 to 100 yards, I'd fish 6 foot short. But it does depend on where you're holding the rod and how much stretch is in the line and how deep. They're like the variables. You've got stretch, you've got rod position, and you've got depth. And the single best way to do it is to find your spot with your marker rod or your leading rod, clip your fishing rod the same, pop a marker float up at that range, cast your spom to the marker float, then check it around the distance sticks, and you've worked out the difference. But just being consistent is like a lot of anglers that are new to it are feeling led down with the rod here, the rod there, the rod at different positions every single time. And if you don't hold it in the same place each time, it's going to land in a different position each time. So yeah, it's generally a little bit shorter. Generally it is swinging back a little bit, but not a lot. So yeah, my advice would be to put a float up and check.
Cool. Dominic has asked, are ziggs effective in shallower water, i.e. 3 to 6 foot?
Yes, definitely. They can, when we fished at Bayswater a couple of springs back, quite a shallow lake in a lot of places in the spring. It's this really shallow bit. Kept seeing fish ghost over this clear spot over and over and over again. I had a little pop up out there. I think it was like a match to hatch one, a quite subtle one. They were just swimming over it and over it and over it. And I ended up putting an 18-inch 2-foot zig out, black foam, like directly on a clear spot that looked perfect, and caught one instantly on a short zig. March, April, February, back end of February, could be great times for zigs. March and April particularly, great times, even on shallow lakes.
Cool. Sam Lemon has asked, when fishing a commercial lake in France, how much bait would you start off applying at the start of your session?
Depends how confident I was that I was in a good swim, and how many fish. Say, for example, you come out badly in the draw, you're in a terrible swim, you don't think you're going to see many fish in there. You're going to probably want to fish a little bit more reserved in a swim like that. But say you go somewhere where you draw an absolute flyer, that it's a good swim, that there's loads of fish in front of it, that it's got a good spot, then I might go in a bit heavier. But again, it's a question of how many fish are in the lake. There's not many times when I'm putting more than 30, 40 spoms out. My spomming numbers range from 4, 5, 6, 7, when I think it's tough, and I'm fishing for a bite at a time. In the summertime, I might go in with 30 to 45 if I think it's good. And it's only on really well-stocked lakes with loads of big uns, and I'm in a pucker swim, that when I'm we're talking putting 10 kilos and stuff out. So, yeah, I would hedge on the side of caution, but you've got to read the situation. That is what it's all about. Watercraft is reading the situation in front of you and making the right choice with regard to spot, rig placement, hook baits, how much bait you're going to feed, bait choice, it's all of that comes down to reading the situation. So I know it's a general rule, but go easy if you don't think you're in a good peg. If you're in the swim that's been really doing them, let them have a bit more. You can always apply a bit more if you catch him, whereas if you put 20 key out at the start of your session and you don't see a fish, you might have killed your swim from the get-go. So, yeah.
Cool. Carl has asked, it's Bivvy City in January. Thoughts on the popularity growth for carp fishing over the last few years?
Where's it Bivvy City in January?
No, definitely not Linear, because that's closed.
Is it?
Flooded still, yeah. So
yeah, I think fishing's getting more popular in the winter because of the more luxury. People carry like
heated beds.
Yeah, and people are carrying more luxuries. They've got twin skin bivvies, iPads, heaters, big fat sleeping bags, wheelbarrows. In the old days, people would be fishing under a brolly with sides and a bed chair. With real roughing it kit. So I think more people, it is a bit of a camping exercise at times. People, got busy jobs. They want to get out and just be out in the wilds and having a go, and fair play. I think, it's getting more popular in the winter because it's more comfortable to do it these days.
Yeah. Right, Carl's asked, evening lads, fishing Berners Hall in March. Any tips or advice to help me in a friendly competition? Thank you.
Yes, we went to Berners in March one time, and on average, Berners is, obviously water level dependent, but I'm pretty sure a lot of it is sort of 10 to 15 foot. It was definitely that second swim near the island out. I remember one time, the first time we went there, I plumbed out there, it was like 14 foot, something like that. And we we had it away on ziggs that session in March, didn't we? It was literally just smacking black foam, and I caught them at various depths, but I caught them from a foot below the surface to sort of 6-7 foot off the bottom. That like it was in that sort of band, 6-7 foot zigs and taller. The video's on there. I can't remember what it's called. Burners Burn Up, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
the Burners Burn Up. It was just after COVID, but basically I tried. You only had one rod and a zig on there, I believe, and I did try fishing. Basically, I had 3 different things going on. I had one up the back edge of the island margin, so down the back slope of the island in 7 foot. That rod produced some fish, although there wasn't many fish there, but because it was in the right depth, it done a few. I had another rod that was in like 12, 13, 14 foot on the bottom. It done absolutely nothing, and the zig just spanked out to wherever I was seeing them show. I was fishing like around 100 yards, 110 yards most of the time. And I was changing the height of the zig depending on the conditions, but that zig rod was just doing them, wasn't it? So
yeah, you were getting like double takes, weren't you?
yeah.
Sure.
So depending on the weather, if you go there in March and it's overcast, blowing a freezing wind, and it's not sunny, they could be deep, and you could be catching them in main depth. But if you've got sunny weather, you're going to want to be fishing shallow on the bottom around the back of the island somewhere, because there's not many swims where there is any shallow water. And if you're not fishing shallow around the back of that island, then you're going to be fishing on your zig, I think.
Yeah. Cool. Derek Harrison.
Oi, oi.
He's
Hello,
asked,
boy.
what's your camera settings for night shots?
One thing that I've changed on my night shots is I've stopped using the flash setting on the white balance. For years, I've always thought night shots just always look too warm. On that flash setting, they're always yellow and gold. Everything just shoots yellow and gold. So I've been messing around with the white balance and setting that, either using the cloud setting or the sun. I think I've been using the sun setting. And you can set the Kelvin yourself. I think generally shoot 400 ISO. Generally shoot f4, 4.5, something like that. And the shutter speed, I think, is 250. And the flash settings, is it the ETL mode? Is it? I don't know how you say that. Is it ETTL?
Yeah, ETTL. Yeah.
ETTL mode, and I mess around
on
with
your
it.
flash, yeah.
Yeah, I mess around with the angle of it and stuff.
It's all dependent on the surroundings.
Yeah,
as well.
But if you're going to set up for it properly, you want two lights coming in at 45 degrees behind the fish. So you take the fish close to a background so that you've got something there. You shoot 2 lights in if you've got them, those ridge monkey things, in diagonally from 45 degrees each side, and then those settings. Yeah, I'm not a wizard with it, but
yeah, when we film, we've got the 2 big lights, and we either got 1 or 2, or we've got one on the camera and another light.
Yeah.
And when you've got those 2 lights and you've got the flash, sometimes you don't even need the flash because
so much light.
Yeah,
going on.
but when you got the flash and those 2 lights, that's the way to do it. But it's hard, you can't all take that every time.
The trouble is, you once you've got the fish on the bank, you can do a few test shots and whatnot.
Yeah.
And test, but once the fish is on the bank, you haven't got all day, have you?
No.
No. You got to be quick.
Right. Let's do. Yeah, Adam from before. I remember talking about Pump House. The one that we've got is North Bank. When I went there, when it was really icy.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's that one. David Lloyd. Any advice on fishing deep sand quarries? The quarry is still active, so the water is brick red.
Wow.
Can the fish still visualise baits when the water is red with sand, or do they rely on sense?
I imagine they can't. I don't reckon they can see much in that situation. Yeah, I think it'd be very difficult. I think a lot of what they'll be doing will be searching by scent and using their barbels to really sort of search out the bottom. So yeah, in that situation, I would avoid pop-ups personally. I think pop-ups are at their best when the fish can see them. I think fish can see in the dark to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But yeah, if the water's really coloured like that, I don't think they can see very well. And you don't want to be fishing pop-ups like that. You're more like to foul hook fish and what stuff. So yeah, I'd be fishing on the bottom for sure. What was the question? Can they still see?
Yeah, like are they using the sense, or can they see?
Yeah, no, they're not. I don't think they can see. I think I'll be looking to use something quite smelly. Tiger nuts are very good in coloured water, in my experience. Something that really puts a bit like taste into the water that they can really zone in on. PVA sticks, PVA bags, they are much more easier for the fish to zone in on in murky water compared to pop-ups.
Yeah. Will you do a comp this year for a social on the CarpFix comp page?
A comp?
Like a competition.
For what, sorry?
Will you do
I'm guessing he's talking similar to what Tom Maker's doing, as in, which is like, I think they're picking a winner to go on one of their socials.
I mean, you can.
It could be one of our giveaways, couldn't it?
Yeah, we could do. It's just whether the tricky thing is whether that angler will be available for it. You'll have to like do multiple names in a list, because the first person might not be able to go because of the dates, or they might not.
Yeah, it's something we can look at.
But we can certainly look at it. James Burke has asked me a question. How have you found it on the other side of the camera? Do you feel the pressure to catch, or are you just enjoying the fishing, enjoying the angling? All the best for 2024, lads. Well, normally, I don't get to do a lot of fishing, do I?
No.
Because I'm out with you filming. So being on the other side of the camera, there is pressure there, but the way that we're doing it with Grenville is I'm able to film like vloggy style, and if I catch fish, I catch fish. If I don't catch fish, we don't make a film of that particular.
Yeah, it just goes into.
Yeah, so I don't feel like I'm under pressure as Daryl would normally be under more pressure, because when
there's people's time on the line when I'm there, isn't there? Whereas you're there fishing, and if you catch something, you get some content. If you don't, you put the blank, you add it to your next session when you do catch something.
Yeah, so I don't really feel the pressure to go out and catch fish. And that's why I enjoy going, because I can fish, and it's just a bonus if we catch fish. We just make a film out of it. But it's not really. It's not so much pressure, because I've taken that pressure side of it away a little bit.
Yeah,
I haven't got a team of people behind me filming with me like you have.
No.
So it is a little bit different in that sense. Right, I've got a couple more questions, and for the first time in 31 lives, we'll have got to the end of the questions.
Good.
Right. Dan has asked. How does Daryl store his stiff hinge rigs in a rig safe? Any tips for fishing naked choddies?
Well, I never pre-tie the hook sections really. So for my stiff hinges, I have the booms. They're like pegged out in my rig board, and they've got obviously a swivel at either end. And when I want to use them, obviously I thread them onto either my leg core leader or my naked setup. And then I tie, because I'm using sharpened hooks, I always put a new hook on every single time I cast out. So I don't pre-tie my hook sections. I always sharpen my hooks at the lake, tie my baits on, and do that last little bit. So I just keep the booms pinned out in a rig safe.
Cool. Carp Geezer, are you both at the show this month?
I'm at the show with Corda, and I'll be outside, so I have to wear some warm clothes. I'll be doing the Corda Kaizen casting area, KKK.
Is that what it is?
The Corda Kaizen casting area.
I won't be at the show.
No.
I think I'm going skiing.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's when it is, 27th, just after the birthday, isn't it? 27th.
Nice.
But I won't be there. Daryl will. Dan has asked, are you fishing ziggs on clear spots with lead clips?
Ziggs on clear spots with lead clips? Yeah, when I'm fishing ziggs, I'm generally fishing with lead clips. Occasionally I fish with inlines, but not so much these. I don't even carry inlines very often. But I generally fish with lead clips, but sometimes with inlines. No particular reason why I'd use one of it over the other, really. Yeah.
Right, last question is from Alex, and he's said, tiger nuts, maggots, pellets, boilies, sweet corn, chickpea, hemp, high-vis pop-ups. What's the best in February? Do you want me to do that again?
No, it's fine. It does depend on the lake, the nuisance fish and whatnot. It does depend on the venue. You know, me and Ash had a really mega film Burners fishing bait boat with little pop-ups over sweet corn, maggot, and corn and hemp. Was it sweet corn, maggot? Sweet corn. So sweet corn.
Sweet corn.
No, the two things. So sweet corn, maggots, hemp. Yeah, and just little pop-ups over the top. You know, so that worked really well there. And then, like for example, at Bayswater last February, I caught a couple out there on ziggs. It depends on the venue.
Yeah.
You know,
They're all good.
They're all good. Chickpeas. I've never. You said chickpeas. I've never really used chickpeas. If I'm honest, they're not something that I've used. Depends on situation. Pop-ups, cast out, singles, good. You know, pop-ups over, a little bit of sweet corn, good. You know, hemp if the birds are a bit of a nightmare. Maggots are very, very good. Yeah, so all of them are good winter baits.
Cool, that's it. Thank you everyone for your questions.
No problem.
Good luck if you're braving the weather. It's cold.
Yeah, and I'll see you next time.